Once we start breaking the six-figure price range, I think a new FOMO range and a new FOMO wave of people are going to get into Bitcoin. It almost does feel like cycles might be breaking. We might be on the verge of seeing a money printer to buy Bitcoin. And if that happens, fiat currencies are nuked and Bitcoin is going up forever. I'm the most bullish on Bitcoin. I'm overly bullish to my own detriment a lot. And it does feel like we might hit $1 million this year. I'm just very excited to see what happens in 2025. Like, how high can we run? We've memed Bitcoin to 100K. We're going to meme it to 1 million. Bitcoin's been in a bull market since 2009. For the last 15 years, it's constantly in a bull market. It's going up forever. We know Bitcoin's been adopted faster than the internet, telephone, and other technologies in the world. If politicians fight Bitcoin, they might not end up in office. We are battling $1 trillion+ PSYOP campaign against the truth. I really do believe that what we're doing is super important and trying to wake people up, trying to show people that there is an alternative and they don't have to live this meager existence where, you know, you're living paycheck to paycheck and you can barely pay rent. Bitcoin saved my life, legitimately, full stop, saved my life.
I really check the price too much. I don't know. How is it about you?
Yeah, I mean, hey, everyone that says they don't care about the price is lying, because when the price starts ripping, we all care about the price.
Absolutely. And I think we can just directly start into with that, because it's really interesting for me, the 100K, that we almost are there. And I'm in that great position that I got interested in Bitcoin under 10K. Unfortunately, I only tipped my toes, and there I really would wish that I really splashed in there right under 10K, but I was not in that position. And now we're at 100K. It just feels completely unreal. The thing that we talked about years ago, like 3-4 years ago, that might happen. What is the impact, do you think, once we actually hit the 100K, and maybe we even hit it on the stream? Let's see how the next hour goes.
Yeah, I mean, personally, like I'm with you 100%. I also came into Bitcoin around the 10K. Actually, in 2017, when Bitcoin hit 10K for the first time, I heard I was seeing Bitcoin like 6 times that day. And that was like the signal at the time to actually check it out. Obviously, I heard about Bitcoin in the past and, I just kind of ignored it. But when I heard about Bitcoin at 10K and I saw it, I think it was like 6 times throughout the day, I just kept catching flashes of it throughout the day. It really kind of piqued my interest. And obviously at that point, like, I wasn't making much money. Life wasn't like, I wasn't in a good position in my life, right? Like, I was looking for answers. I was kind of going through like a weird breakup at the time. So I was like kind of at a low point in my life, right? And then I saw this 10K thing. And at the time, actually, like going back a little bit, like 3 months or so before, I kind of got the like bug of, oh, wait, like, if I want to actually have something in my future, maybe I should buy stocks. And I remember walking into Charles Schwab and they basically laughed me out of the building. They're like, haha, like you need $2,500 to even open an account here. And I'm like, what? Like, I have like $250. Like, this is the whole point. Like, this is before Robinhood was like a thing, So there wasn't this just like throw a little bit of cash and get exposure to stocks yet. That's kind of like the 2018 era of investing. And I literally got laughed at Charles Schwab. Anyways, fast forward 3 months, Bitcoin hits 10K. And that kind of piqued my interest into Bitcoin. And I watched a couple of Andreas Antonopoulos videos. And as the saying goes, the rest is history. And anyway, just kind of using my own story, I think that's kind of what we're going to see at 100K. Obviously, for us Bitcoiners, 100K is like a huge psychological number. It's a big round number. It's probably going to make all the noise in all of the corporate press. And it really feels like the FOMO from retail. Again, this time is a little different in regards to retail. In 2017, free money was flowing. Everyone had cash. Like, it felt like good times. Everyone's like, let me just throw money at things and hopefully I get more money. Now might be a little different because of inflation. People are starting to feel the crunch in their pocketbooks. And so maybe we won't have the retail FOMO, at least right now. because people don't have as much free flowing cash. And it seems like a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck, working 2 jobs just to survive. So that might be a little caveat here, but it does feel like 100K is a psychological price point. And once we break that 100K and start moving into 6-figure Bitcoin, it really does feel like the FOMO is going to kick in. Obviously, you know, Trump just got elected. It looks like the new incoming administration in the U.S. is kicking off this like global hash war, the global game theory, the FOMO that is playing out afterwards, and the ripples that's been happening since Trump kind of announced this pro crypto administration. We're seeing it start to play out. You know, in Russia, they started to legalize Bitcoin mining. They're talking about using Bitcoin business to business. You know, it's still kind of not so much for retail. We're seeing kind of China backflip on their stance on Bitcoin. There was a big Shanghai court case or a court reading this week saying that like it's legal for Chinese citizens to hold Bitcoin. Obviously, El Salvador and Nayib Bukele is just leading the charge on that. They're doing really well. They're stacking a lot of Bitcoin. We got the Kingdom of Bhutan with, I forget what the numbers is, but their GDP is like $2.9 billion and their Bitcoin holding is currently at like 1 point something billion dollars. So it looks like their GDP is going to get dwarfed by just their Bitcoin mining holdings. And so it does feel like the game theory is playing out. Everyone is having to look at Bitcoin like a legitimate investment. It's maturing. You know, politics is landing on our door. And I really do think that breaking 100K with conviction, and who knows, maybe we kiss it today and then it kind of consolidates. But once it actually breaks 100K, I really do think that there's going to be a whole new FOMO wave coming. And of course, Wall Street's getting interested in Bitcoin. So these psychological numbers, even though most Bitcoin, like I don't know if we're going to put the part where I just said, like, most of us Bitcoiners claim to not care about the price. And then once the price starts running, we're all watching the price. And so I feel like that's kind of how things play out. Like, Bitcoin price going up, for better or worse, is how most people get locked into Bitcoin. You know, as the saying goes, you come for the money and you come to and then you stay to fix the money. And I think that's what we're going to see with 100K. Obviously, as Bitcoiners, personally me, and I'm sure you're the same way, I am bull-tarded as it comes. I'm the most bullish on Bitcoin. I'm overly bullish to my own detriment a lot. And it does feel like, you know, there's been a lot of speculation from a lot of Bitcoin OGs that like maybe we might hit $1 million this year. That still seems a bit outlandish to me, but it does seem like things have changed. And once we start breaking this 6-figure price range, you know, that psychological trigger of $100,000 Bitcoin, which Bitcoiners have been talking about for, you know, 10 years plus. Once we break it with conviction, I think a new FOMO range and a new FOMO like wave of people are going to get into Bitcoin. And now it's not just retail, you know, it's going to be Wall Street. It's going to be nation states. It's going to be the biggest institutional managers of the world. It's going to be retail. So I think this year, 2024 has been one of those years of laying the foundation for catapulting into, you know, maybe the S-curve adoption of Bitcoin that we've kind of been talking about for a long time. Like, I hate saying super cycle is here because I'm wrong all the time, but it almost does feel like cycles might be breaking. Like, it almost seems like this time is fundamentally different. If the US does acknowledge Bitcoin, put it on their strategic reserve stockpile, et cetera, and other countries follow suit, like, we might be on the verge of seeing a money printer, you know, to buy Bitcoin. And if that happens, like, fiat currencies are nuked and Bitcoin is going up forever. As the meme goes, you know, everything divided by 21 million, Bitcoin has no top because fiat has no bottom. It's like, at this point, I've been joking. Like, at this point, I'm still kind of dead inside. Like, I've expected 100K for a long time, so I'm not that excited, but I can feel the excitement starting to bubble inside me. And I'm like, I'm going to lose my mind. Like, this 2025, I'm going to be losing my mind every single day on the stream. And I just hope that I can remain sane because it's getting crazy out there.
It's a weird feeling. You see your net worth going up for like 80, 90, 100%. And I don't know, you just described it. I don't feel a lot. Like it does not make anything, but I think like the 100K could actually do a lot. And you described very beautifully right now with like this cycle, how different this is, because we always talk about the super cycle and when you look at the larger picture, I think we are in a super cycle since 15 years. Like Bitcoin is its own large super cycle. But I really want to emphasize how different this cycle is. We have now presidents and nation states talking about it. Like we have Bhutan, El Salvador, and maybe America stacking them each other out. That is completely different. And I think one thing that is really interesting right now, it seems like there's no retail involved till now. It seems like there is no real. I don't get a lot of messages. The only retail messages I get, people that are hold for a long time and now selling a little bit. Like it seems like really like retail is sleeping and not expecting something big. And this is just driven by MicroStrategy buying a lot of Bitcoin, BlackRock buying a lot of Bitcoin, and all that things. Could that actually this gradually and sadly moment now happen? I had 2 or 3 episodes ago an amazing example with what exponential growth is, and I'm obsessed with that example right now. And this example is like, okay, you fill a football stadium with water, and the first minute you drop 1 drop of water in there, in the second minute you drop 2 drops of water in there, and then like exponentially 4, 8, and so on. And the thing is, after 45 minutes, you're 7% high. And after just 50 minutes or like 5 minutes more, you're completely full. And so I think that's what the people always talk about, gradually then suddenly. How do you look at that actually happening? And this cycle might be actually different, and this whole nation state and institutional money coming in, and then maybe at the same point with the 100K barrier, retail is getting unlocked.
Yeah, well, I absolutely love the exponential growth example that you just give, because I think about that constantly. Like personally, I like to joke that I'm a 65 IQ Bitcoiner. You know, I used to be 80. I'm losing brain cells. I'm 65 IQ Bitcoiner. So like, I always think of it. It's very hard to wrap our head around large numbers. Like even right now, Bitcoin's at like $2 trillion. So it's like that. We're so used to that number that we're like, yeah, whatever, like 2 trillion, like we're going to 280 trillion. But if I always remember there's a good infographic that goes around of like what $1 trillion actually looks like. And the amount of dollars to make $2 trillion or $1 trillion in $100 bills, I forget what it is, but it like dwarfs like a whole airplane hangar. Like it's a lot of money. Like that. It's like, no, wait, I think it's like the Empire State Building. I forget what the picture is, but it's like, it's a ridiculous amount of money and it takes up a lot of space. And so I always try to wrap my head around big numbers because, again, 65 IQ, maths is hard. You know, quick maths is even harder for me. And so I try not to get too in the weeds with maths. But when you really understand exponential growth and how, you know, large numbers move, it is incredible what big numbers can do. And I'm not one of these people personally that thinks of the diminishing returns meme. I know in the last kind of 3 Bitcoin cycles, we kind of have this like diminishing returns meme that like, oh, since the Bitcoin price is getting higher and the market's getting bigger, it takes more money to push the market. And with that, I'm like, yeah, you know, depending on the previous data. But now, again, it seems like a lot more capital has been unlocked and a lot more capital is going to get into Bitcoin. So, you know, yes, on the one hand, the law of big numbers is going to affect Bitcoin and maybe we see diminishing returns, but that is kind of just given the expectation that things are going to remain the same as they've had in the past. And that's, you know, a few big Bitcoin companies with conviction getting into Bitcoin, buying Bitcoin, doing the MicroStrategy strategy, and then retail. Like the last 3 cycles, from the beginning of Bitcoin up to 2021, maybe it was more like 2018 into 2020. I would argue that most of those cycles were led by retail. And, you know, that's why it's been such a good money that's been distributed around, you know, all the corners of the world, is because individuals like ourselves have found Bitcoin useful, have understood the underlying framework of Bitcoin, and we're all in. You know, like we have no more fiat left, or like, man, I wish I had more money to buy more Bitcoin at these prices, because we know it's never going to come down again, or rather, you know, like who knows where, if there's a bear market and what's that's going to happen. But when you understand what we just said a minute ago, it's like nation states are FOMOing into Bitcoin. Like central banks are on the one hand attacking Bitcoin, and on the other hand, probably secretly like, we need to get some Bitcoin. And so if they turn on the money printers to buy Bitcoin, literally they can print all of the money ever to buy Bitcoin. And that isn't factored into the models. As the Seyr quote goes, you know, all your models are broken. And that even includes in Bitcoin models. So as much as I'm trying to be conservative here, it does feel like the S-curve adoption might be playing out, not just like the, you know, exponential log chart. It's like the S-curve where it takes a huge leap forward. And I think that's where it's at. And not only thinking of just the amount of capital that's going to get into Bitcoin, but personally, I always say the same thing. It's like, look, guys, I know all Bitcoiners only talk to other Bitcoiners, and we're in this echo chamber, and it seems like everyone around us understands or knows about Bitcoin. But if you go out into normal life, you know, like you go out to dinner or go out to a bar with friends and normie friends, and you start asking them about Bitcoin, very few people either care or understand what Bitcoin is. And with that comes the fact that the adoption levels of Bitcoiners versus the total population, I think, is still incredibly low. I think Saylor's numbers are something on the lines of like only 0.1% of the world's capital is in Bitcoin. And his conservative estimate is that 7% of global capital will get into Bitcoin. And I kind of argue very similar that there's only, I would say maybe, you know, like 1% of the population is like adamant full Bitcoiners, Bitcoin maxis with conviction that understand what they're holding. And so that just means that we need, I don't know, like 99% more of the population to understand Bitcoin. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen in 5, 10, 20 years, considering like I'm pretty sure the stat is only like 55% of the global population right now is on the internet. And it's not like the internet's ever going to go away. But still, if we get global adoption of Bitcoin from 1% or 0.1% or whatever the number is to 50%, that's still a lot of people that need to get into Bitcoin. There's still the majority of the population that doesn't hold Bitcoin, doesn't understand Bitcoin. And so I think if you add those two things together, like the amount of global capital that's going to go into Bitcoin and the amount of adoption on an individual level that are going to combine into Bitcoin, if that perfect storm hits Bitcoin, you know, this next year, I think all our models are broken. Like we could be seeing that S-curve adoption and that exponential growth that we talk about. And I don't know if the law of diminishing returns will hold up. Obviously, I don't know if this cycle is going to play out like the past cycles, if we're going super cycle, et cetera. But like you said, you know, Bitcoin's been in a bull market since 2009. For the last 15 years, it's constantly in a bull market. It's going up forever. The price chart always goes up and to the right. And even if you're conservative, like the 250-week moving average, it's always going up. Like it's just constantly going up as more people adopt Bitcoin, more people start to understand Bitcoin, and more people start to throw capital into Bitcoin. So it does feel like it could get absolutely crazy. And all of these memes that we've held on to in the past of, you know, exponential growth or laws of diminishing returns, like it really does feel like S-curve adoption of technology might be playing out. And we know Bitcoin's been adopted faster than the internet, telephone, and other technologies in the world. It's the best technology. I love the meme of the internet was created solely to push Bitcoin adoption. Like, yeah, the internet's good, but the only reason we ever even had the internet was so that people can adopt Bitcoin. And when you kind of think about that, you know, exponential growth upon exponential growth, it's like Bitcoin is high powered, super powered, perfect money on internet rails. And we could get that into the hands of so many people as long as they kind of leapfrog the traditional financial system, which we've seen play out with smartphones. You know, a lot of people around the world in third world developing countries, like they don't have bank accounts, but they have smartphones. And it's very easy for us to, you know, just zap them some sats and now they're on the Bitcoin network. And if that starts to propagate out, it really feels like the dominoes are falling really quick, almost faster than I believed it would have, even though like I know that it's happening as fast as I thought it was. And in the moment, you're like, man, it's happening so slow. You know, this last bear market was kind of brutal. We're like, when it's the Bitcoin meme, like poking it, like Bitcoin, can you do something? But if you think about the groundwork we've laid the last 2 years, the fact that Bitcoin's basically at 100K and no one's even noticing, like all those things are very bullish to me. And I'm just very excited to see what happens in 2025. Like, how high can we run? And will we ever see a cycle again? Like, I think those are the big questions that we're seeing right now is, you know, the price moving this next year after it breaks 100K? And is the cycle theory continuing to play out? Like, when do we decouple from the cycle theory and it just keeps going up? It's like the other meme. Again, guys, sorry, I speak in memes. I'm basically a Zimmer here. I speak in memes. It's like that one Bitcoin meme where the guy jumps into the water and then there's like a rocket ship under him and it's like the Bitcoin price is like do 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 do, you know, and it just keeps flying forever. Like, I'm starting to feel that exuberance and that mimetic meme energy coming back into Bitcoin after, I would argue, a pretty brutal bear market. I think it's the longest bear market. And so a lot of us Bitcoiners still have PTSD and we're like, no, you know, I've still been hearing the rumors, or rather the grumblings from people like, oh, Bitcoin's only going to go to 150K, bro. Like Bitcoin's only going to go to 200K. And I'm like, guys, we're in a bull run. We're in the blow off top of a bull run. And you think it's only going to go 50 to 100% this next year? Like, historically, once Bitcoin breaks the all-time high and starts running in a bull run, it pumps for 11 months. Like, we've only seen 1 month and people are like, oh, it's going to stop at 150K for the whole year. I'm like, you're only going to see a 50% this whole next year. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me. Honestly, I would be pretty mad if that was the case. I'm like, dude, what's the fun in this? Like, the fun is dunking on people and being like, see, I was right. We got a 5X this year. Like, you're dumb. But I'm trying to stay humble. I'm really trying to stay humble, but it is hard to not go to your friends and family and be like, I told you so. I've been telling you for 7 years. Like, it's very simple. Just save in Bitcoin, live your life, and your life gets better. And so I really want that euphoric moment next year of be like, I told you, you should have bought more Bitcoin. Listen to me. I am the smart one in the family. Listen to me.
I love that. And I mean, for me, it's like there's like those two hearts pounding in my chest, because like the one is like, I really want that feeling that you just described. And it's like, hey, see, like I told you at like 7K per Bitcoin. Now we're at like 250K or like 300K or whatever.
No, Robin, sorry, you're bearish. I told you at 7K. Now we're at 700K.
And I think that's the other heart that's beating in me, because I'm like, I'm just 26 and I really want to earn a lot of Bitcoin and have fun when I'm like 35, 40, 50, not spend. I really would wish that the Bitcoin price is dunking again, but I really don't think so. Like, as you said, and especially like we have all the great things going now for Bitcoin. And for me, the big surprise factor in this cycle that I did not expect like a year or 2 years ago was Trump and America all of a sudden being in Bitcoin. Like, I was always like, America is like the last one. America has the US dollar. They will always have some Bitcoin confiscated, like maybe 200, 300,000, which is a massive amount, but they will not consider that a strategic reserve. They will not consider accumulating Bitcoin as a strategic thing. They will not pass a bill. Not a bill actually is in progress there. So that was a huge unknown for me. I did not expect that at all. So with that being said, I think all bets are for the next years, and it's really interesting how this goes. And I know with Nico actually a few months before, especially before the election, I talked with him, and we talked about Trump also a lot, and especially like what impact it will have on Bitcoin. Now with you, we have a little bit of data already, but like still quite new because Trump is not even elected yet. He's elected, but not in office yet. What do you think will be the impact of Trump all of a sudden being? I'm hesitating saying bullish on Bitcoin because he's also doing a lot of crypto stuff, but he's definitely more bullish than Harry's on Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen kind of what the impact is already. And I think the big if today, this is November 22nd of 2024. We have about 2 months till Trump actually takes office. And I think the big if is if there will be follow through on this. But with that being said, I think we've already kind of seen the impact of what Trump means to Bitcoin and the world at large, because ever since Trump came out, well, really, I guess it probably started with Larry Fink. Once Larry Fink kind of announced the Bitcoin ETF, it was like a shot across the bow, and everyone was like, oh, well, if Larry Fink thinks Bitcoin is something that they want to make a product about, not only does that one mean that his customers at BlackRock or, the people that are having assets with BlackRock are talking about Bitcoin and they want that exposure. But now that is the signal to other institutional managers that they have to also take Bitcoin seriously. And so, that started at the beginning of this year. Larry Fink, basically, I know you're not an American and this might not be this might be the quiet part out loud, but whatever Larry Fink wants, he usually gets. And, there's rumors and there's trolling that Larry Fink's the real president of the United States. The capital that is flowing is really the one that's in control. As the meme goes, those who lobby the government are the ones that actually own the politician. And Larry Fink basically owns everything. You could argue Larry Fink owns basically half of the world at this point. And so what Larry gets, or what Larry wants, Larry gets. And so once he kind of put his stamp of approval on Bitcoin with the ETF product, then it became from, the past where it was like, oh, it's career suicide to embrace Bitcoin, to the opposite, where you have a fiduciary responsibility to embrace Bitcoin at this point. Like if Larry Fink's doing it and, you're like some mom and pop or a smaller institutional manager, like, oh, you think you know better than Larry Fink, bro? Like he wants Bitcoin. He has a Bitcoin product. You have to embrace Bitcoin. And then fast forward about 6 months. And I think the first Trump announcement was around July. We know Trump went to Bitcoin 2024 in Nashville and did his speech and the whole historic Bitcoin strategic reserve. And then ever since then, we've seen other nations have to take Bitcoin seriously. Like I said earlier, China seems to be kind of reversing roles in Bitcoin. And so the game theory is playing out. Russia's also kind of being a little more lenient, embracing Bitcoin. And then just recently we saw, smaller countries like Poland and presidential candidates there talking about Bitcoin. And so you can see the game theory play out, or as Kaiser always calls it, the global hash war start to play out. And it's like, if you want to, well, no one will ever have first mover advantage because El Salvador took that from, they will always be cemented as the first country to embrace Bitcoin. Their name, El Salvador, translated as the savior. Like, do we live in a simulation? Is there a simulation out there? Because it's kind of too perfect. So El Salvador will always be the first country, right? But when you really look at the math, El Salvador is a tiny country. Bitcoin put them on the map. Their GDP is, I haven't looked at it this year or updated recently, but it's roughly around $32 billion. Like, Elon Musk could buy, I forget what the number is, but like 20 El Salvadors. Like, they're a tiny country. They're obviously trying to be more future facing. They're trying to make sure that they are able to compete in the future, and obviously adopting the future's money, which is Bitcoin, is how they're able to do that and put themselves on the global stage. But I think what really is the defining conversation now is what is happening in America and American politics. And of course, there's other issues in regards to politics that like we don't have to get into because we're Bitcoiners. But the fact that Trump did come out and say like, hey, I want Bitcoin to be a crypto capital of the world. Like, we can't let China get ahead of us. We can't let Russia get ahead of us. Like, that game theory is playing out, and everyone else has to take it seriously. And what we've seen in the last couple of months, or rather the last couple of weeks more so, is that it's not just coming from the federal level in the US, it's coming from the states as well. And now we're seeing that states in the United States are also looking for strategic reserve bills. They're also talking about adopting Bitcoin for their personal state treasury. And so, this is fracturing into where, if you want to maintain the lead, the competitive lead that you have right now, you have to embrace Bitcoin. And I was like you, for a while on our show on Simply Bitcoin, Nico and I pretty much ever since, I don't know, like 2 months ago, really, maybe 3 months ago, we were very seriously concerned about what was happening in the US with all of the Operation Choke Point 2.0 news that kept coming out, and the fact that more data was coming out that the current administration was actually fighting the Bitcoin industry and trying to stop Bitcoin adoption. There was a very real conversation of like, wow, are we going to actually have to leave our home because we're Bitcoiners? Like, it got a little scary there for a little bit. And now, I don't want to get too hopeful, but I am optimistic about where this is going. And if we get 4 years of favorable coverage from the Trump administration, then that's obviously going to allow capital to flow into Bitcoin. Bitcoin companies won't have to leave the US. Like, hey, Bitcoiners can say all they want about Wallet of Satoshi, but it was one of the best wallets. Like, it works. Yes, it's custodial, but like, it simply works. And I think that is kind of where we need to go with Bitcoin products. Is it needs to be consumer friendly. And if the biggest countries in the world or the biggest companies in the world are leaving, what I would argue, again, I'm American centric, are leaving the best country in the world because of unfavorable regulations and laws, like, that is a detriment for everyone on planet Earth. Like, we want the country with the most capital to have the most Bitcoiners so that they can build the good products, so that Bitcoin becomes the truly unstoppable freedom money. And the fact that we've been fighting Bitcoin, or rather the US government's been fighting Bitcoin, like, that definitely hurt adoption. Gary Gensler just resigned yesterday, saying he's going to leave once Trump gets into office. He's famously taught an MIT course on Bitcoin. He becomes the SEC head, and he's just like doing his best to slow walk the Bitcoin ETFs. And so now we're like, okay, get someone in there that is going to be favorable for Bitcoin. So all that being said, it does feel like there is a whole new game theory being played out. It's no longer just the individual level, it's the nation state level. And like you said, I was with you, because the US is in a precarious situation right now where, like, Trump is going out there and saying, like, I'm going to embrace Bitcoin. We're going to have a strategic Bitcoin reserve. We're going to get us out of debt by holding Bitcoin. And with that comes the fact that the US still has the world reserve currency. And so it is kind of an admission by a non-admission that the US dollar, or rather fiat currencies in general, are trash. And if they fully embrace Bitcoin, is that one of those tipping points where other people start to realize, like, oh, wait, why am I holding these fiat currencies when even the US government is saving in Bitcoin? And if they start to print money to buy Bitcoin, then that gets us into this, like, hyperinflation debt spiral where the average person is getting decimated because they're holding fiat currencies, and the US government is printing more and more and more of the dollars to buy Bitcoin. So us Bitcoin holders, obviously, we're going to be happy. Like, yeah, pump our bags forever, US government. Like, turn the money printer on to buy Bitcoin. I am okay with this. I am protected. I'm on the lifeboat. But if they do that, that is an admission of just how bad the fiat system is, how bad fiat currencies are. And so they are in a very precarious situation. Of course, world reserve currency status. Are they going to maintain that status by, basically backing the US dollar with Bitcoin, however that mechanism is going to work? But it is an admission of the fact that the dollar is trash. If they are like, yeah, we don't want dollars, like, we don't want treasury, we don't even want our own debt. Like, they don't even want their own treasury bonds anymore. They're like, actually, gold's old. Let's embrace the future. Let's start saving in Bitcoin. Let's turn the money printer on to buy Bitcoin. So it really has changed the game. And again, the big if here is what follow through are we going to see in 2025? Was this just all political pandering to Bitcoiners? You know, Bitcoiners as a political PAC, I'm pretty sure raised like $130 million. So like that was a significant lobbying effort by the Bitcoin industry. And so with that comes the fact that, hey, we paid you. So now you got to listen to us. We're in the room now, and we're not going to just like give you $130 million and you don't really follow through. So that's kind of where we are right now, where at first it got scary. Trump comes out like, we're going to embrace Bitcoin. Now he gets elected. So now the conversation is like, holy shit, the US government's going to embrace Bitcoin. Like we have to follow or else they're going to leave us behind. You know, America is already technically the biggest holder of Bitcoin in the world as on a nation state level. And if they do flip that over to Bitcoin and not keep selling it to the market, and then also add more Bitcoin to that treasury, they might be pulling like a Michael Saylor strategy where like, I think Michael Saylor is very comfortably in the lead for the person that will ever have the most Bitcoin publicly. Like, yeah, Satoshi has roughly, you know, 1 million Bitcoin, but we don't know if he's ever even going to come back. We don't even know if he's alive. We don't know if he has the keys to that Bitcoin. So on a, you know, individual level and on a company level, it seems like no one's going to be able to catch up to Saylor. And if the US government kind of does something similar and the price starts to run to these incredible levels, it seems like maybe no other country will be able to catch up to American Bitcoin holdings. And, you know, as an American, I'm a little conflicted. Like, yeah, I want, you know, American excellence to maintain because I don't want my home and my family to start to dwindle on their living standards. But then also it's like, how did they acquire that Bitcoin? You know, no one wants to talk about the fact that how they acquired that Bitcoin. And now they're kind of like, yeah, let's just move it over on our accounting sheet. And hey, we get to profit off of this Bitcoin. So, you know, I am a little conflicted here, but the game theory is playing out and everyone has to take Bitcoin seriously. Like Bitcoin's a mature thing and they can no longer just be like, oh, you guys are, you know, drug dealers and you know, financial. Wait, is this going on YouTube? Maybe I should chill. You know, you guys are illiterate financial idiots over here. Now it's like, oh, the suits are here. They're going to try to mature, you know, quote unquote, mature this asset class and, you know, basically like point their fingers at us and like, oh, you stupid kids in hoodies don't know what's going on. And we're like, hey, bro, like you just showed up to the game. We've been doing this for over a decade. Like, chill out. I get it. You guys got the capital, but the game is changing. And I think very interesting things are going to start to develop in the next, you know, year for like by next election cycle. Who knows where the Bitcoin price could be? But we did see something interesting this cycle where if politicians fight Bitcoin, they might not end up in office. It's not as easy as Elizabeth Warren going out there with her anti-crypto army, you know, meme. It's like if you fight this industry, you not only are you hurting the people that you're supposed to represent, but you're going to hurt your chances of being a politician still. And so like we've matured and we are a movement. Yes, we still need to kind of build our financial stockpile as an industry. Yes, we still have to secure our ranks as more people come into Bitcoin, but you can see where this is headed, that Bitcoin is a real political movement. Even though a lot of Bitcoiners like to say like, oh, Bitcoin isn't political. It's like, yeah, it's apolitical money, which means it is actually political. And now, hey, we're lobbying the government. So as Max Kaiser said, he who owns the Bitcoins makes the rules. So, you know, maybe we're going to be buying politicians soon, Robin. Like, you know, maybe you have your own and I have my own. And hey, this sounds great. I'm here for it.
I partnered up with Coin Vigilante. This is the most beautiful Bitcoin timepiece that I ever saw created by anyone. Look at that beauty. I love it so much. Coin Vigilante made a perfect Bitcoin watch. That's the perfect, subtle, elegant way to go out there and show that you are a Bitcoiner. And that watch brand is Bitcoin only. And Coin Vigilante just dropped a completely new and amazing Genesis edition of their watch collections. You have the date of the first ever mined Bitcoin block in there. And of course also the block height and which epoch we are currently in. I love the level of detail they put in this masterpiece. And make sure to check out those amazing Coin Vigilante timepieces down in the descriptions. I love those watches so much. If you watch or listen to my podcast on a regular basis, I'll guess you already bought some Bitcoin. And now the most important step is to keep the Bitcoin. Keep them secure in a hardware wallet. My personal recommendation for hardware wallet is the BitBox. It's super secure. It's simple to set up. It's also a perfect gift for a friend who has still their Bitcoin on an exchange. And you can get a 5% discount with the code Robin at the checkout. Visit bitbox.swiss/Robin to get your BitBox. And the next step is to really level up your sovereignty as an individual. You have to have the most secure self-custody setup. You have to secure your own devices. You have to protect your privacy. You have to set up an inheritance plan. And depending on where you live, you even want to have a plan B, a citizenship where you can move in case something goes really wrong. And through all those steps, the Bitcoin way is guiding you through step by step. And if you visit thebitcoinway.com/partners/Robin, you even get a 30-minute free call to find out how you can level up your sovereignty.
Yeah, I hope so. But I feel like I have a lot more work to do in Europe.
Yeah, you do.
It's because you told like America got the Bitcoin with the 200,000 that they have, something like along those lines, and you conflicted of like how they got it, but at least they were clever enough to not sell it because Germany.
Dude, they're so wrecked right now.
They literally, I think they triggered the bull market because since then the Bitcoin just went up in a straight line. It was, I don't know, two or 2.5 months ago when they sold. It is crazy that they did that, and now there's a website outside there that tracks how much money they lost on the missed gains they could have made if they just like waited half a year or something like that. It's crazy. It's like almost now at 1.5 billion. I don't know what the math looks like, but yeah, they had 50,000 Bitcoin. They sold at like around 60K or something like that. Now it's soon at 100K. You can do the math how much money they lost with just like selling too early. Or selling it all. Like they could have said like they don't need those money. And the weird thing is, I don't know if that made the press overseas also, but they really celebrated that sell. Like they really celebrated, like we made that money now because we confiscated the bad guys and now we liquidated the Bitcoin and now we got all that fiat money. And so they really celebrated the fact that they sold the Bitcoin and liquidated it in euros. And I was like, yeah, like let's look back in half a year, and this look back is already here after like 2-3 months. So that's pretty crazy for me.
That's crazy.
Absolutely,
it's already like 100x.
It's crazy. Yeah. You brought up so many interesting points. First of all, I think I forgot what you exactly said, but the thought came into my mind of like Bitcoin is for me the scoreboard of how bad the fiat system actually is doing, and so we kind of see like we how great Bitcoin is, but at the same time how bad actually fiat is, because one part of the Bitcoin price is the adoption of more people getting it. But another part is just like the money that it is measured in. So the US dollar is just getting debased also at a rapid pace. So that's great. And also MSTR that I wanted to talk about a little bit. Saylor said, I think today or like yesterday or somewhere along those lines, something with like they are printing $500 million per day. If you look at the numbers of the evaluation going up, with that they are almost like the most profitable company on earth now. Do you think they actually have a shot at being the biggest one on earth when they keep executing that? And there's also the big question: are they overpriced? How do you look at MicroStrategy?
Yeah, well, first off, I am almost feeling the FOMO to buy some MicroStrategy stock, but I feel like I've missed the boat. I've been watching it all year. It's like my job at Simply Bitcoin is obviously stay current on the news, and we cover the news daily. And I forget what the number was, but like the beginning of the year, it was like $100, and now it's like 500. Like it had a 5x this year, and I've been watching it the whole year. And I really feel like there's people that look at Bitcoin and they see the price run and like, I'm too late to buy it. Like I don't want to buy the top. And I don't own any stocks at all, but watching what Michael Saylor has been doing, he's been putting on a masterclass. And I know he's kind of been fighting the meme of like the infinite money glitch recently. He's like, it's not an infinite money glitch, but it does feel like that's what he's doing. You know, he's able to take, what is the,
it was
$60.
68 and now like at 40. That's just like
It's
550%. That's insane. Yeah.
It's nuts. So, you know, on the one hand, watching the stock go absolutely nuclear. And he actually did a really good interview this morning. I think it was CNBC or something like that, or maybe a Squawk Box. I forget what it was, but he did like a 10-minute rip and explains, you know, the whole process of MicroStrategy. And one of the things he basically said is like, yeah, right. Like MicroStrategy is basically like a levered Bitcoin play, you know, like for every Bitcoin that goes in, I basically am able to gain like 3x Bitcoin on top of that. And you're like, dude, how is this even possible? You know, like what is going on here? But I've been joking all year, like, man, you know, if you look at the numbers for these loans, he's getting like, I forget what the number is, but it's like less than 1% interest rates for the next 10 years to go buy Bitcoin. And it's like, if any normal person had, even if it was like 4%, you know, like I forget what the number was, but it's somewhere between either like 1 to 4% interest on these loans for 10 years. It's like Bitcoin's going to blow past that. Like that's such an easy trade for any Bitcoiner that understands what is going on here. And that really goes back to this whole idea of like, will the money printer get turned on to buy Bitcoin? Or rather, you know, what we're starting to see in the last couple of weeks since Trump got elected is you're starting to see the banks and the traditional institutional asset managers start to kind of understand the MicroStrategy strategy and be like, well, if I can take very cheap loans out and I just buy Bitcoin and I hold it for, you know, 4 to 8 years before this 10-year loan actually matures, then like I'm in the green. Like that's an easy no-brainer trade for anyone that isn't afraid of Bitcoin volatility. And so you're seeing what Michael Saylor is doing with MicroStrategy. And of course, on the one hand, I'm like, man, I should have bought that stock at $60. I would have had a 5x this year. Now I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I can do it. Like it's already at $500. So you're seeing the psychology play out with MicroStrategy stock, like people are seeing with the Bitcoin stock. And I think Saylor is just, you know, putting on a masterclass out here for every other corporation to follow suit. We see this week as well that he is going to do a 3-minute presentation for the Microsoft board to actually have them adopt Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, or rather put it on their treasury balance sheet. And so you have to, I'm convinced that every huge CEO or every executive suite in the world that runs the biggest companies and corporations in the world have to legitimately look at Michael Saylor and be like, can we do this? Is this feasible for us? Like, is this the way that we maintain our head start and now our dominance in the market is by just simply adopting Bitcoin? And it seems like that's the case. Like it seems all you need to do is like, obviously you want to have a good product, you need to have a good business, but adding Bitcoin to your balance sheet is a cheat code. I mean, you and I have experienced that on a personal level. And you know, the meme that we've always heard, at least in Bitcoin spaces, is like, if you balance your checking book like the government did, you'd all be bankrupt. And if you kind of flip that flip that script on its head, well, it's like, well, maybe corporations and nation states should balance their checkbook like Bitcoiners. You know, you live below your means, you have a skill, you have a job, and then you put your excess profits in Bitcoin, and then soon enough, like, you know, your Bitcoin stack is moving more than your yearly salary, and you're like, what the hell is going on right now? And so I think what we are seeing, and Saylor is starting to kind of really prove it, and I think 2024 was the year that Saylor got vindicated, like at large over everyone that's noticing, is that there is a new paradigm playing out. There's like the old paradigm, the dinosaur paradigm of traditional fiat institutional managers. You buy treasury bonds and you get 6% interest a year, and you just kind of flip it over. And like, it's just funny to me that Wall Street, it gets so excited for 2%, 6% profits, and us Bitcoiners are like, dude, that's like a morning fluctuation in Bitcoin, 6%, and we don't even wake up until we start seeing 20% plus moves in Bitcoin. And so I think, actually, even talking about Seyr, he did a great interview with Nat Brunell this week as well, and he said something on the lines of the traditional financial world essentially only works with like 6% gains. And if you get Bitcoin in it and you get these 60% gains, it's like connecting like live electricity into the fiat system, and it makes it just go berserk and blow up. And so you're starting to see the old thinking from traditional financial world look at Bitcoin, and they're trying to wrap their head around, okay, how do we incorporate this without blowing up all of our models, without actually blowing up the financial world? Because, hey, if the world is basically, running on 2 to 6% interest rates, and that's kind of how we have this perpetual growth, if you throw 60% gains into that, like, we really are going to see, like some deflationary aspects of the economy. And we all know what Keynesians think about deflation. They're like, that's the big boogeyman in the room. Whereas if you listen to Jeff Booth, it's like, that's how things are supposed to work. Like, things are supposed to get cheaper over time. But in the status quo that we're seeing, in the dinosaur paradigm that is the current traditional financial system, it's very hard for them to understand this new paradigm of Bitcoin. It's kind of like, the meme of putting a square peg into a round hole. They're like, they're trying to morph Bitcoin into the traditional financial world. And this is why you're seeing a lot of the rhetoric that you're seeing, like, oh, Bitcoin's an asset. Bitcoin's just a commodity. Like, it's not money. And there's some legal ramifications for why that is a case, but you're also seeing that they're just, they're trying to wrap their head around what they know and what they've been invested in, and, what they've been studying and talking for the last 40 years, and be like, oh, we know, we're in our suits. Like, we know what this Bitcoin thing is. And we're like, I don't think you do. I think Satoshi opened up a whole, what's Seyr said at one time, like, Satoshi opened up a portal into cyberspace, and now, it's bringing the future into the past. I can't do the Seyrisms, but you get the idea. It's like Bitcoin has fundamentally put a tear into the continuum, the space-time continuum of the fiat system. And now they have to figure it out. Like, they have to find a way to embrace Bitcoin, to adopt Bitcoin, and also maintain their kind of status quo and their leads. And, all of us Bitcoiners are just kind of sitting here chilling, or like, yo, just, pump my bags, but also don't co-opt this Bitcoin network because it's so beautiful. And as the number goes up, more Bitcoiners get financially free. As more Bitcoiners get financially free, this movement starts to build with more people adopting it and more capital behind it. And it's going to dwarf the system. There's a tsunami on the horizon, and it's coming for the big bad boogeymans of the world, which is all of the traditional financial worlds. And it's like, man, it feels like it's actually happening, dude.
It's definitely happening, and it's crazy to look at. I'm really looking forward to the 3-minute presentation of Seyr at Microsoft. I'm really looking forward, because I never heard him giving an answer under 3 minutes. will be fun to see under 3 minutes and the whole thing. Maybe we can then take this 3 minutes, just learn it by heart, and then take it to Christmas to all our people there. One thing that I keep hearing when we talk about MicroStrategy is that MicroStrategy is the new altcoin season. Like, usually in the bull run, you're like, you buy in some altcoin to get more Bitcoin. I never was a fan of that, because I just like my Bitcoin in self-custody and don't touch anything else. Is kind of MicroStrategy not a new altcoin season, and maybe even like a maybe even like negative, a little bit of a distraction for Bitcoin hodlers, because they're like, okay, let's sell 10% or 20% of my Bitcoin holdings and just like get into MicroStrategy to get a little bit of a leverage in there. Could it be also like a distraction for Bitcoiners?
Well, I think so. I mean, I haven't come across that meme of like MicroStrategy is the new altcoin play, basically, to get more Bitcoin. I haven't heard it put in that way, but I have seen a lot of people on Twitter basically be like, oh, I sold all my Bitcoin to buy Master stock and, I'm up 4 to 5x. I'm going to run with it and then, eventually put it back into Bitcoin. Personally, I would never do that. But hey, like get your gains and that's awesome for you. And it does seem like that might be the play. It is basically a levered Bitcoin play, though it's very interesting. I don't know if you saw it this morning, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with Jim Cramer, but he basically,
of course.
Yeah. Okay. So did you see the clip? I think it happened last night. Or maybe it was this morning. I forget. But someone basically called and was like, let me tell you about this stock. It's going 5x. It's been killing it all year, and it's MicroStrategy. Like, what do you think about it? And he basically was like, like I would just buy Bitcoin. Like I would do what MicroStrategy is doing and just buy Bitcoin. Like you don't need the leverage play. And he's literally like, I like Bitcoin. It's the winning move. And we're like, no, we're never going to see 100K wreck. Like inverse Kramer activated. No. But even Saylor's kind of said the same thing where he's like, look, if your play is buy MicroStrategy, to just like increase your Bitcoin stack, he's like, I wouldn't do that. Like, I'm just buying Bitcoin. Like the move is buying Bitcoin. And that's what you should be doing is like, I'm showing the world how to do it, but you should just be buying Bitcoin because that's what we're doing. Now, obviously we all understand, like if you have capital in the traditional financial world, it is a lot more difficult to get it completely into spot Bitcoin. Like those vehicles aren't fully fleshed out yet. Yes, you can buy some Bitcoin ETFs, but if you have capital in the institutional markets, like you probably buy MicroStrategy. Like the ETFs aren't going 5x this year. So it is very interesting idea of, is MicroStrategy the new altcoin play? And is it a distraction? Maybe, but I think it's also kind of giving Bitcoin a lot more publicity, because anyone that looks into MicroStrategy, they, we were kind of joking this week. It's like, what does MicroStrategy actually do? Like they're a Bitcoin development company. They're an intelligence, business intelligence company. But in reality, what everyone's kind of saying is like, they're just a company that stacks Bitcoin and figured out a way to take out debt and buy more Bitcoin. Obviously, Saylor would probably say otherwise, and he's a lot more eloquent when he says it. But for the average person out there, it's like, what did they actually do? They just buy Bitcoin. So maybe I should just buy Bitcoin. So I think that does give a lot of publicity for kind of the average person out there. Obviously, most people are just going to kind of be like, I just want the gains. I'm just going to, I'm just buying stock for the gains that they're increasing. And maybe eventually they'll kind of fall down the rabbit hole of like, oh, well, all they're doing is buying Bitcoin. Maybe I should just buy some Bitcoin directly for myself and understand the whole freedom aspects of it. But on a more cynical view, I have seen a few Bitcoiners kind of go a little more cynical with MicroStrategy and saying that like he's going to blow up eventually. And I don't know about all of that, but it would kind of relate to the altcoin cycle theory you're talking about, where, you get your gains and then eventually the altcoin cycle ends. Like, obviously, personally, as a Bitcoiner that runs a Bitcoin company, I never wish malintention on any Bitcoin company, period. Like, I think all Bitcoin companies do a service to the industry to, either propagandize Bitcoin, get good products out for Bitcoiners, or, get into the normie mind share of Bitcoin, in the normie mind share about Bitcoin. And so I wouldn't want to see that. But obviously there is, I think, some people kind of being cynical and saying that, and that, hey, it might play out through the altcoin season. But it seems like Saylor's been very good at hedging his bets. And man, again, going back to the last rant, like, I wish I bought some MicroStrategy at this point. I would have liked a cool 5x this year, while we got only like a 1x. Like 5x is way better than 1x.
We got what I have it here because I keep monitoring just so I can see it if we actually hit the 100K while stream. We had 124% this year to date.
Okay.
So not too bad, but it's a little bit more than 2x. Pretty lame against the 5x from MicroStrategy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Like, I want a 5x. I want a 5-bagger. This is 2025.
True. Maybe it comes later for Bitcoin. And it's also interesting what you mentioned. If you have to put in the stock, and maybe I would also go with MicroStrategy over like a Bitcoin ETF. Like if you have a retirement account or something like that, and you don't have the choice of self-custody Bitcoin, then actually I think MicroStrategy is a really good choice because it's faster. And to be honest, I think it has kind of the same risk than a Bitcoin ETF. It obviously doesn't have the leverage, but I kind of think Michael Saylor knows to a certain extent what it does financially. So I don't think it will blow up because of debt. So that has the same risk for me as a Bitcoin ETF, but I'm not a financial advisor. I have no clue. I was in stocks before, but I just got lucky. I didn't know what I was doing there. Definitely. But yeah, really cool. One thing that you mentioned before, that you're talking in memes and maybe a little bit of change of pace here. How important is that whole Bitcoin culture for you, that meme culture? We often say like we memeing Bitcoin on the global balance sheet of the world, it seems like. And I also see us content creators a little bit as the digital soldiers that go out and evangelize Bitcoin and just be present everywhere. I really like the perspective of like we are fighting a information warfare and we kind of have to stick out there. And I think that's also why it's such an open community. And I get that warm vibes from you and from Nico and from all the other content creators. Like there's zero competition between each other. At least that's what that my feeling was here when I came to the space. It's like, hey, I want to help you. Hey, how can I contribute and stuff like that? How do you see the Bitcoin community, the memes, the digital soldiers, all the things that I've mentioned?
Yeah, well, first off, I love memes. You know, life is memes and memes is life. It's memes all the way down. Literally what we're communicating in right now is memes. It's called the English language. It's all memes. Like everything is memes. But yeah, I'm just on the internet too much, and I speak in like Zoomer. I'm not even a Zoomer. I'm a millennial, and I only speak in memes. You know, I literally like I try to get the information, and this is like my synopsis of memes in general. Like we've said it on the show, we've kind of sunsetted the meme review on our show where we would show Bitcoin memes, but I think memes are very important. Memes are by far one of the most important things in Bitcoin. Yes, you know, like actually building the technology and getting people to hold Bitcoins is very important, but the power of memes cannot be understated. Like you said, we are battling, you know, $1 trillion+ PSYOP campaign against the truth. And that's what the powers that be have had for the longest time, is this control over the narrative of truth, or rather, you know, the perception of what is true. And, you know, for better or worse, since 2016, since Trump came in and did the famous meme of fake news, it's fundamentally shifted the way people look at corporate press, or what we kind of like to call it. They're pure state propaganda. Like there's no separation from the state apparatus and corporate press, or, you know, the deep state, or whatever you want to call it, the ABC agencies. Like they get their mandates from them and then they propagate them on the television. And it reminds me of the Batman movie with the Riddler, where like everyone is, you know, watching the TV and they're all getting brainwashed. And this is what we're fighting against. And so the thing that is so powerful about memes or mimetic warfare that we find ourselves on the front lines for is that Bitcoin memes, or rather memes in general, they have to, one, have truth in them. They have to be truthful. I thought I turned that off. They have to have truth embedded in them so that they resonate with people. And then further, or rather educate people about something. And then further, you have to distill, you know, maybe a whole book or something, a whole huge idea into a very short time frame. And so if you're able to distill truth with as little words as possible, and then that propagates, you're literally, you know, in this ADD, very social media, dopamine fried society that we live in, propagating these memes and getting these memes in front of people very quickly and very efficiently, that's how you're able to spread the truth around very quickly and get people up to speed. And yes, you can kind of make fun of memes because, like, I have some Bitcoin friends that are like, dude, memes don't mean anything. And then we're like, no, we've memed Bitcoin to 100K. We're going to meme it to 1 million. You know, we've memed it to strategic reserve asset. And so I think memes are very important. And going further, one of my good friends, he did, like, he had this website and he would literally track all of the military agencies' papers about memetic warfare, and they're writing actual papers about memetics and memetic warfare. And, you know, not to be a full conspiracy theory, but we all know that there is, you know, $1 trillion+ psyop campaign that we all just lived through. And the only way they're able to propagate their narrative is through memes. And so once you kind of really do understand that you're shit posting on Twitter, you know, the memes that you are creating, the conversations you're having with friends, like, this does fundamentally change the culture. And this is what we are up against as Bitcoiners, as someone that believes in freedom, believes in truth, doesn't believe in censorship, believes that no central entity can control the flow of information or the flow of the economy. It's very important for us to understand that we are all nodes in the network. Like Bitcoin has nodes to propagate the Bitcoin network, we as individuals, as still living, breathing, thinking humans, you are a node on the network, and it is your duty to propagate the truth. It is your duty to continue to spread what you believe is the truth, obviously verifying it with your experience, with your research. And if you're able to distill that information and it resonates with other people, then maybe you can wake up. Again, you know, we're all basically frequencies here, and memes start to raise the vibrational consciousness of humanity. And yes, you know, memes are fun. You know, they're very childish. They're filled with humor. Sometimes they are ridiculous and mean, but you're still able to propagate truth and to propagate information. And if you can propagate the information very succinctly and pass it on to someone else, and it's kind of like the telephone game. And as it reaches another person in the network, it reaches more people in the network, and more people and more people. And that's how we start to educate people, is by more people waking up to what's going on and understanding what the playing field is that we currently find ourselves in. And it really does feel, since this, you know, election, 3 weeks ago, that the corporate press, you know, the progressive media, it does feel like they're starting to lose their power. Some argue that they're like completely done. I'm not so convinced. I think they still have a lot of power and magnitude in what would they used to say? Freedom of speech, not freedom of reach. And so I think they still have a lot of reach in regards to most normie people's minds. Like, they still believe in the institutions. If you say, you know, something came from CNN or Fox, they're like, oh, it's the truth. You know, they wouldn't lie to me. Except for us Bitcoiners, we're like, dude, they don't talk about the truth. They just spread propaganda. They just spread their narratives. And so you are on the front lines of this memetic war, and it is a memetic war against the truth. And as a Bitcoiner, I fundamentally believe that Bitcoin kind of collapses this superficial 21st century social media paradigm into reality again. And we've been living in kind of a live it to beaver, what's the dang, I'm blanking on that Jim Carrey movie right now where he's in the bubble.
Truman Show.
Yeah, exactly. We're living in that like Truman Show-esque society where very few people understand the true nature of reality. And now Bitcoin is kind of collapsing that, you know, facade down to reality. And to succeed, you have to align yourself with reality. You have to align yourself with truth. And those that are still anchored to the lies of the past, it seems like they're starting to fall by the wayside. And so I'm very hopeful about the mimetic war that we find ourselves in, not only because we're on the front lines and we have a job to continue to propagate this information, and like this is our job to, you know, as the hat say, be the Bitcoin propaganda department, but I really do believe that what we're doing is super important, and trying to help people, trying to wake people up, trying to show people that there is an alternative and they don't have to live this meager existence where, you know, you're living paycheck to paycheck and you can barely pay rent, and, you know, you're eating really poorly because you can't pay for eating good food and you're just barely surviving. It's like once you can get past the survival level, then you start to get to the level of thriving. And I think that's what most Bitcoiners feel. It's like we're invigorated with life again because we have just woken up from the Matrix. Or, you know, it's like, again, a cliche Bitcoiner talking about the Matrix. But when Neo gets unplugged, you know, it's shocking. It was like he sees reality for the first time and he's unsettled. And part of what we do with as Bitcoiners and people that are doing memes and, you know, spreading memetics is you're taking that person that just woke up and is unsettled, and you're kind of like being like, it's okay, bro. Like I remember when I was you. Like, trust me, it gets better. And you just got to follow, you know, the protocols, follow the good fundamentals, first principles, and your life's going to improve. And really, that's one of the things that I love the most about what I do every day. And even coming on here with you, like, I always think of it very simply. Like, what would I tell myself at 18 that would have basically allowed me to step all of the stuff that I did that wasn't fruitful for my life? Like, I literally just talked to myself as an 18-year-old. You know, I'm a millennial. I'm in my early 30s. So like, I'm always just thinking like, how can I communicate this in a way where someone that is, you know, either younger than me or, you know, not to say like I'm ahead in the race, but like behind in the race of understanding Bitcoin, is like, how do I get this message across so that they can also start to live a better life? Because Bitcoin's allowed me to live an incredible life so far. Like, I've said it in the past on other podcasts, like, Bitcoin saved my life. Like, legitimately, full stop, saved my life. I was not happy in the fiat world before. I was working a job I didn't like. I couldn't, you know, I could never save more than like $200 in cash. I would always spend my money. It seemed like a very dead end existence, even though I knew there was more. And I'm a philosopher by trade. So like, literally I have a bachelor's in philosophy. And so I like knew there's more to life, but then you get to like reality and you're like, man, I can't ever get out of the rat race. Like, I can't get off the hamster wheel. And then you find Bitcoin, and that's why I think so many Bitcoiners kind of have this like coming to Jesus, like, you know, born again Jesus moment where you find out about Bitcoin, it clicks, and then you're like, telling everyone like, I can save you, like, save yourself, we can save you, you just need to save in Bitcoin. And you kind of come across like crazy or overbearing. And now I'm really kind of leaning into, and it's full circle to the culture aspect of this, where I think the best way to lead the culture is by you living and being a real flesh and blood example of what it means to be not only a good human, but a good Bitcoiner. And if you are at this point in life where like you see one side of the aisle, they're very, you know, nihilistic, they're unhealthy, they aren't hopeful, they're pessimistic about the future. And then you see the other side, which is like Bitcoiners that are like, they're healthy, they're vibrant, you know, they're financially well off, they're having families. And you're like, either you can look at Bitcoiners and hate them, or you can look at them and be like, wait, I want a good life. Like, I think everyone just wants to have a good life. And I think Bitcoin is a tool for us to live a better life. And I think that is the best way to win the culture forward. As Bitcoiners start to increase their purchasing power and their status in life, other people are going to look to Bitcoiners and be like, I want that. What do I need to do to live a better life? Like, what do I need to do to be a healthier person? What do I need to do to have, you know, loving and compassionate relationships? And it's like, bro, just like take a step back, work your job, sacrifice a little bit, save in Bitcoin, and trust me, your life is going to be better. Like, just stop participating in the lies of the fiat system and come join us in the truth. Like, it's so much nicer.
I love that. Is it fair to say that Bitcoin made you a better human being?
Yes and no. I mean, I think I would say yes. First of all, yes. Obviously, I'm still a human. I have my flaws. I'm not perfect. I don't ever claim to be perfect, but I do think it did kind of make me a better person, because before I found or rather before Bitcoin actually clicked, I was very lethargic. I didn't want to work. I like, I was very nihilistic. I thought I thought everything was kind of pointless in the world, in the rat race. I'm like, what's the point of doing this? Like, I'm beat up. I'm tired. I don't want to go to work. I'm like, what's the point of this? Like, what? Again, I'm a philosopher by trade, and I only fell into philosophy because I wanted to answer simple questions like, why am I alive? What's the point of being here? Like, simple questions. I don't know. Like, what's the, like, is there a God? All this stuff. Like, I just wanted to understand what it was to be a human. And when you are in the fiat system, you definitely get beat down and nihilistic, and you don't want to work, you get lazy, you just start to kind of tune out and ignore a lot of things. And now that as a Bitcoiner and someone that runs a Bitcoin company, like, yes, Mondays are still a little hard because it's like the start of the work week. It always still feels like work, but now I'm like invigorated. It's like every day it's just, man, how can we continue to just keep killing it and keep building our business and get myself healthy, because I need to usher in these sats for the long term. I don't want to be one of these guys. Like, I've been watching Dr. Jack Cruz recently, and I don't want to be one of these tech forward people that dies at like 56. I'm like, I want to be here for the long run. I want to be 80 plus years old and see what Bitcoin does to the world. So I would argue yes, to an extent, but obviously it's not like this huge transformation, like, saved by Jesus moment in Bitcoin, because I don't really believe like the Bitcoin is God meme, but it has fundamentally like supercharged me, where like I think of the future. I want to be an old person. Like, I want to have a family. I want to usher in these sats. I want to build a good business. And it's because, I'm incentivized to, I want to stack more sats, like, yes, finally you kind of have that like rocket fuel put in you to actually produce and contribute to society. Whereas before I wasn't contributing to society. I just like, I'm just like, give me what I'm owed, and like, F off basically. Now I'm like, all right, how much can I contribute to society? Because I don't know if I knew this before Bitcoin or after Bitcoin, but I fundamentally believe that the richest people on planet Earth, if you kind of, separate the parasite that is the money printer, but most of the rich people on planet Earth are those that provide the most value to their fellow man. And I fundamentally believe that is something that Bitcoin sparked in me, where it's like, okay, you want to get rich, provide value to your fellow man. And if you can provide the most value to your fellow man, then you are rewarded in things called money. And we have the best money. And I want to be rewarded in the best money because, I do think highly of myself. So part of me is like, yes, Bitcoin did make me a better person. The other part of me is like, I don't know. I feel like I'm more of an extremist now. So I'm trying, I'm trying to balance out where like I'm very extreme in a lot of my thinking. Again, because I know I'm right, so like I'm trying to stay humble here.
Yeah, it's I sometimes wonder how much is contributed to the fact that we are so early in a really revolutionary movement, and because we are like we are in an environment where so many critical thinkers are, so many brave people are, and this kind of pushes us to the limits. Like if someone comes new in there, he's all of a sudden in a way better environment than he probably was before, and this pushes yourself. And how much is to the new incentive set of what Bitcoin actually does to you. So it kind of feels like Bitcoin is a new way of life, but maybe that's just because we're early. It's really fascinating also to see your life transformed in that. They're really, really cool.
Yeah, well, no, Robin, I think I would fully agree with that Bitcoin is a new way of life, because it is a hard money standard. And again, kind of going back to the cultural aspect of this is, I forget what the quote is, but culture is downstream from politics, or is it culture is upstream from politics? I forget what it is, but essentially, you know, by changing the culture, you change the outcome of society. And as you can see right now, we are living in, you know, people like to call it the fiat society, or a very superficial, you know, plastic society, however you want to frame it. And, you know, you could also argue that a lot of politicians are incentivized to be liars and thieves because of the fiat incentives. And now having a hard money standard where money doesn't just literally get printed out of nowhere, you have to fundamentally change who you are to adapt to that new reality. And so you do see that it does seem to kind of like change a lot about you. And I think this is for the better. And if us Bitcoiners as individuals can kind of maintain our trajectory and impact on society and grow as the Bitcoin movement grows, and you know the new top influencers are Bitcoiners, then that will fundamentally change how society works and how the fabric of society is kind of put together. And I think that is like the long-term game here, where, you know, as Robin's podcast gets bigger here, you know, as you start to overtake Joe Rogan as the podcaster, you know, like you get to talk about the things you like, and part of that is Bitcoin. And if we have the influence of, I forget what his viewers are, but like 30 million viewers on this show, like these ideas start to take hold and people start to fundamentally change their worldview. And, you know, we could potentially head into some kind of future that we couldn't even imagine. That, you know, like right now it's like unimaginable to see $1 million per Bitcoin next year. But hey, if enough people believe it's coming and they're all piling into Bitcoin, like we could meme it, you know, in a year. But we don't have that following yet, and we're not that big yet. But I do believe that just these conversations, and one by one, and all of us kind of changing ourselves and our friends around us, this is how we change the culture. It's kind of like you know, the Michael Jackson song, like look at the man in the mirror first and change yourself. You know, that's the only thing we can do is fundamentally change ourselves. And the opposite is people wanting to change other people. And I'm like, I think I might have believed that when I was younger, and now I'm like, the only thing in control is my behavior and what I ingest on social media and what I'm reading and what I'm saying. And so I'm really like, you know, doing the internal work. This whole Bitcoin journey for me is like doing the internal work. Is like, am I the person that I portray myself to be? And also, am I worthy of ushering in these sats? Like these sats are invaluable, and am I worthy of holding them? And if I'm not, then hey, I'll end up with the stack that I deserve. And if I am, and maybe more so, maybe the stack will increase. So it is kind of one of those like crystal moments. It's you know, like once you step, or like the interstellar moment, you know, once you step into the cosmic, like, are you actually who you think you are? And are you really going, or like Space Odyssey 2001, as you can tell, I love sci-fi movies. So like, you know, you see yourself and you see all of the cosmos, and it's like, am I the guy that I think I am? And I think Bitcoin is that like testing metal that will show you to you. And I think that's what most of us want to know and do. Is like, am I dope? Am I actually as dope as I think I am? Or am I a LARP? I don't know. That's what I think about constantly. It's like, man, we seem to have something going at Simply Bitcoin. We're super hyped and super humble, and it seems surreal. And now it's like, okay, well, we're in this position. Or like you yourself, you know, you came on the scene kind of strong this year, and like you're working your ass off, and you're probably still asking yourself like, man, is this going to pay off? And like, just keep going, dude. Like, who knows how big it can get, and who knows how many people you can impact and change their lives. And like, that's one of the things that really is incredible to me, is just people coming up to us and being like, dude, you changed our lives. Like, you really changed how I view the world. And you're like, man, that's so humbling, because we're just like, I'm just in my room talking into a computer. You know, I'm just losing my mind in front of a computer, and you forget other people are taking value from this and being like, man, he's a cool dude, and I relate to his story. And okay, you know, in 7 years or 5 years, you know, if they're like 20 Bitcoiners, et cetera, they're like, man, okay, maybe in 5 years I can also be doing something really cool and impactful. And it's like, that's all we can ask for, is to spread the good word and, keep people optimistic and stacking as much Bitcoin as possible.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget that there are people listening to us.
Yeah.
At least for me, that's why I love going to conferences. I'm going more and more bullish and deeper on conferences. Was in El Salvador, was in Amsterdam. I will be soon in Abu Dhabi. I'm really looking forward to just like having the people there. Yeah, beautiful. We come to our end routine of the podcast where there's one question that I ask each and every one of my guests, and it kind of, maybe it was already in there, but what can we learn from you besides Bitcoin?
What can they learn from me? Just lean into the crazy. Like lean into saying the thing that can't be said. Obviously within the Overton window and without like blowing up your life and trying to be too edgy. But I think one of the things that is missing in the world right now is true authenticity. And I've noticed for me personally, like I just have fun. I joke about it all the time. I just black out on Simply Bitcoin every day. Like I drink coffee, go on the show, and I pop out an hour later and like, oh, what did I say? Was it good? So it's just like lean into authenticity, like lean into what excites you the most. Lean into the people that, get you energetic and excited, and like shun the stuff that feels like it's a duty. Like turn away from the stuff that feels like it's taking your energy. And if you follow your intuition and your gut long enough, you might end up at something incredible. And it's really about kind of exposing people to themselves and being like, look, if you are listening to this podcast, you still have a brain and critical thinking. Use it. Like you understand what's going on. Use your internal compass. Like you don't have to, look for exterior. Dang, I'm blanking on it. You don't have to look at exterior exterior stimuli to tell you are the truth and what you're saying is true and what you believe is true. Like just go, just send it. Like your gut knows what is going on. Like, a little more craziness in the world in a good way, not like, actual craziness, but like a little more eccentricity, I think is a good thing. Be authentically you and everything will be good. Just send it. Life is great. Trust the process. And man, the life you dream of is only on the other side of fear. So just send it. Everything will be good. Trust in the higher power, trust in hate to get woo woo, but trust in the power of love here, and you will be in an okay place. Like do things for the betterment of humanity. And I think everything will check out in the end. So man, just full send it. You know what to do.
That's beautiful, Opti. Really, really cool. I loved it a lot. We have the other end routine where the previous guest is asking a question for the next guest without knowing who the next guest actually is. I guess it will be a short one because you don't know the answer of that, I guess. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
I have no idea. It's I don't know. I like to think it's a group of people. Actually, I know it's wrapping up here, but I like to think that Satoshi Nakamoto was an AI to bootstrap Bitcoin. I like the most cosmic view here. Like, I don't know. Who knows, man? All we do know is it wasn't Craig Wright.
he went ahead and really tried hard to prove that he's not Satoshi Nakamoto. He really wanted to prove to the world that he is not it.
No, I'm not going to get into it, but I do have a funny theory around the Craig Wright saga. Actually, maybe I'll say it anyways. Like, I do find it kind of funny. Like, maybe Craig Wright trying to claim he was Satoshi was a good way to kick people off the trail that he might actually be Satoshi. I'm not saying he was. I'm just saying he's doing a good job of proving he's not. Like, that's some pretty good OPSEC here. You want to kick people off the trail. Act like a lunatic, and then no one's going to believe you. So hey, you never know. That's all I'm
gosh,
saying.
that's. I think that's the best theory I ever heard that could convince me that Craig Wright might actually be Satoshi Nakamoto.
Hey, I thought so too.
Really, really cool. Thank you so much, Opti. It made a lot of fun. I think we got a good flow today. Thank you so much for being on. Before I let you go, I guess Simply Bitcoin, most of the people listening already know, but can they find Simply Bitcoin? How can they find you? How can they reach you? Where can they find your stuff?
Yeah, appreciate it, Robin. So you can follow me on Twitter. My Twitter account, my personal Twitter account is Optimist Fields. Just spell it out. Optimist like being an optimist, not like Optimus Prime. And then Simply Bitcoin. Just check us out on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter. We are on Zap streams. I think Twitter is Simply Bitcoin TV. On YouTube, just check Simply Bitcoin. We do a live show Monday through Friday at 12:15 p.m. Eastern time, covering, trending news stories, cultural aspects around Bitcoin. We bring on cool guests in Bitcoin. It's roughly about an hour show. That's the Simply Bitcoin live show. That's like our flagship product over there. And then we have all kinds of other product or shows on our channel. We have Rustin doing the Simply Bitcoin OGs. We have Dante doing Bitcoin Simply. And those are more distilled, like 10 to 15 minute news YouTube videos to covering certain topics. Those go out. They kind of alternate throughout the week, but we have content for you guys basically 7 days a week on Simply Bitcoin, up-to-date news stuffs, usually extremely bullish. We're bulltards after all. But yeah, we keep you up to date on the news over at Simply Bitcoin. And yeah, man, we're super excited about the future, and we're always iterating and trying to get cool new content on the show. So, go check us out on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, Simply Bitcoin TV. If you want to follow me, Optimist Fields, I tweet less lately, but every once in a while you get some cosmic stuff coming out from me, but it looks like the sun's coming in here. But yeah, Robin, I appreciate it. This is fun. I hope I didn't go too off the rails here, because I feel like I got a little cosmic on today's show.
Off the rails is usually the best segment. So like off the rails when the guest is kind of ranting, that's the best phase. By the way, also congratulations on Dante. I think he's great addition to the Simply Bitcoin show, and I really liked him at Swan, and now at Simply Bitcoin I think he's even better. So really great. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on, Opti. Thank you so much also for everyone that is joining us today. As always, I'll be back tomorrow with another episode. Bye bye.